Hi, and welcome to Stephan Livera podcast, a show about Bitcoin and Austrian economics brought to you by swan.com. Do you believe every company will be a lightning company? Founder and CEO of Voltage, Krizek rejoins me on the show to talk about this idea as well as what's happening in Bitcoin and Lightning. We talk about why big companies are doing financial services, and is it because they want to be near the printer? What does Lightning do differently? What use cases are there and who's looking at them? Products at Voltage, as well as thoughts on LDK by the Spiral team. Brought to you by the team at Swan is Pacific Bitcoin Festival. Now, Pacific Bitcoin was a hit last year in LA, so it's coming back this year in October, and this time it's going to be a festival. The feedback was fantastic. We had so many people telling us it was their favorite experience. Lynn Alden said she had more fun at this conference than at any other conference before. Seriously. And Steve Barber said, no joke, y'all who didn't come to this really blew it. Place is vibrating with pure signal. Another attendee said, if I could make it to only one Bitcoin event, this would be it. So Swan is putting this on again with awesome speakers like Greg Foss, Preston Pish, Corey Clipston, Alex Gladstein, and so many more. October 5th and 6th in LA. So mark it in your calendars now. I'm looking forward to speaking there and seeing you also. Use code Livera for a discount over at pacificbitcoin.com. Make sure you get your tickets before prices go up. That's over at pacificbitcoin.com. Use code Livera. Mempool.space is the leading Bitcoin visualizer. I use it all the time before I send a Bitcoin on-chain transaction. Mempool.space shows you multiple aspects of the Bitcoin ecosystem, whether that is mempools, the blockchain, to second-layer networks like the Lightning Network. And with Mempool.space, you don't have to trust a third party. You can host and run this yourself on various full node distributions. If you're with an enterprise, Mempool.space offers custom mempool instances. You can have your company's branding as well as increased access to the team. And they also have a new product coming soon, the Mempool Accelerator, which was announced recently. So keep an eye out for this and go and find out more at Mempool.space. And now onto the show with Graham. Graham, welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me back.
There's lots going on. I know you guys at Voltage are doing a lot of stuff around, obviously, the Lightning Network, and you wrote this piece recently, Will Every Company Be a Lightning Company? Now, maybe for some people that's controversial, maybe for others in our world that's not so controversial, but let's start. Like, what spurred this article? Why did you write this article?
So the original inspiration for it, I guess, was really it references a post or it was a presentation from Angela Strange at Andreessen Horowitz a couple of years ago, and it gets referenced a lot. And it's called "Every Company Will Be a FinTech Company," I think, and so I kept hearing that a lot. And then, I actually took the time to read the article, listen to her presentation, things like that. And I think it made a lot of sense. And really the inclination for her, the presentation originally is that no one really enjoys their bank. No one likes the banking system in its true form. And to provide a better experience, more apps are going to be adding in financial services into their products and services. So take an example of like Uber or something where they, you keep a balance in your Uber account to either, for the rides that you do or rides that you're going to do, that kind of thing. And so being able to bring financial services closer to your end user instead of always having to go to a bank to do anything makes a lot of sense, and it provides a better user experience, all these different things. And so I kind of, with this, I said, yes, I think that makes sense, but I would take it a step further of not only are we going to, is it make sense to move financial services closer to the end user, but if we look to do that, there is the Lightning Network is the superior payments network in the entire world. It's the best system for sending and receiving payments. And so I'm going to take it a step further and say every company will be a Lightning company, because as we look to move more financial services to the end users, there is no better system than the Lightning Network and Bitcoin, Bitcoin inside of the Lightning Network. So that was kind of the original idea, and really expanding on that and how does that literally work? Like, how do we bring financial services to the end users, and why is Lightning so important for that?
Gotcha. Yeah. And so I think we can understand that in some ways, where this is a common term people use even in business school. They talk about vertical integration. This idea that you might not just do one thing, you might do one thing that's above you or below you in the stack per se. So as you said, like Uber or some of these other companies who want to launch their own card or hold value inside, have Uber Cash, like an Uber balance, and that way they can cut out they can start to try and cut out middlemen in their own way and maybe take more of the profit for themselves. But as you're saying, Bitcoin and Lightning opens that playing field even further. And so I guess that's part of the argument. So what are some of the reasons why some of these, let's say, non-financial services companies, or at least not traditionally financial services companies, are going to try to innovate in financial services?
Yeah, I mean, it's several things. So kind of like I just mentioned a second ago is around like the user experience. So if you don't like the user experience of using something like an Uber or something is good because you don't have to like always be ACHing in and out of your bank account for like every Uber. Like they have some forms of abstracting a lot of that away. Similarly with like the point system, or like take Apple for example, and their like Apple Card, and being able to provide a better user experience when you're buying Apple products with their own card. And so I think ultimately it boils down to the user experience. The more that you're able to bring in-house or into the experience, so to speak, the better the user experience is going to be. When you have to start connecting 4 different pieces together, the user experience really suffers generally. And so I think that is one aspect. And then kind of like you mentioned on the efficiency gains of one, being able to do transactions inside of your own application and services. So if you're able to keep a lot of that inside of your own ecosystem for your application, you're able to probably cut a lot of fees or just unnecessary API calls, something like that. Your application can just function more efficiently. And then finally, it generally speaking is more sticky for your end user. Your end user is gonna stay in your application for longer, use it longer if you have that experience. Again, like the more that users have to jump around to different applications and services, the less likely they are to stay in your experience and really live in it. And so I think that's another area is really focusing on the end user and not only keeping them inside of your app and being having them return as a customer, but also keeping them happy as a customer, and that that they can get a good experience out of it.
Gotcha. Yeah. So let's summarize that then. You can deliver a better customer experience in some ways. So that's part of the argument is customer UX. There's maybe some efficiency there and stickiness, right? Apple is famous for having their walled garden, right? This idea that you have the iPhone and it connects with your Mac and it connects with, etc., other aspects of the Apple cloud system, that it all kind of interconnects, and Microsoft has this and Google has this, and everyone wants to try to keep users in the ecosystem as long as possible because that's where you can make the money on them. And perhaps there's even a profitability argument as well, whereas, as you said, some of these gift card balances, some of these companies can make some money off of that too, because now they can take that money that the customer is storing, quote unquote, with Uber or Apple or whoever, take that and turn around on the back end and be running some of that with a money market fund and be earning a little bit of interest there too. So there's like a profitability argument to it also.
Yeah. I mean, there is in that, and I think that the other opportunity here is if you look at, so say in a world like if we take kind of what I'm saying to the extreme of every company will be a Lightning company, and that like maybe those Starbucks rewards are not Starbucks rewards anymore, they're actually sats, and you can use like your Starbucks application is then a Lightning wallet at that point. And then you think about the interoperability of that amongst everything else in the world, and if more and more folks are starting to accept Lightning, then that turns into your Starbucks application being able to, the points that you get from buying Starbucks coffee is actually has more real world use than like the Starbucks rewards points. And so I don't really drink Starbucks at all. I don't really like it. I don't care about it, but I would definitely drink it more if they gave me sats instead of the Starbucks rewards, because that has real utility, that has real value that I can go and use and do something else with. And so I think that that's a big element as well in this kind of equation, is the ability to, if we were to really leverage this, open monetary network that is, global, being able to do that, adding that into an application opens up to a lot of new possibilities as well. So I think that there's a whole area of kind of untapped potential for these companies to be able to connect into this global ecosystem.
Yeah. So, yeah, interesting, as you said. So it's kind of that trade-off then, because on one side there's the stickiness angle, right? If you as the company or the big, massive megacorp want to keep people in your ecosystem, in your little walled garden. But on the other hand, there's this open ecosystem and it's competing. But there is a difference here, right? Because you could say getting access and plugging into that open network might make people more happy to use this thing to begin with. So as an example, it's like the analogies people used to make about internet versus intranet, right? If everybody's trying to build their own intranet, but rather people want to be accessing the open internet or being able to email anybody, not just people who are using the same email provider, let's say. And so there's kind of there's an open angle to that maybe there will be more users who can plug in and connect to that. I think similar arguments are also being made about Nostra as well, that like this idea that Nostra is this open protocol that because builders on Nostra, you're building an application on Nostra, you've got this automatic inbuilt base of possible users. And so it's not just like, oh, this is Twitter's monthly active users or this is Facebook's monthly active users. It's just anyone who's using Bitcoin or anyone who's using Nostra could potentially use this application. So in a similar way, maybe there's an angle around that. So let's talk a little bit about, I think there's perhaps one other angle to this that I was thinking about as I was reading your article. I was thinking there's also this angle of the monetary spigot, right? So those of us who are fans of Austrian economics and understand that money is not neutral. It matters who gets that new money first. And so what happens in a fiat monetary system is that companies try to subtly jockey for position. Everyone wants to get closer to the money spigot because if you're closer to the money spigot, you win, right? He who is closest to the monetary spigot wins, and those who are furthest away from the money spigot, they are losing, and savers are obviously losing. Anyone who's saving money, as in saving fiat, in a fiat system, is losing because their money is just getting inflated away, whereas the new purchasing power is going to those people who get you money first. And that's why we see some of these companies who try to, let's say, become a quasi-bank. And that's why we see even some of these airlines are not actually profitable on the actual airline. They're profitable on their frequent flyer programs, which are paired up with, guess what, credit card providers who are, again, close to the banks, financial institutions. So there's an angle there as well that it's not that they want to do financial services per se, or maybe, the reason they want to do that is because they want to get close to the monetary spigot.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that is, when we think about, there's a lot of uses that can come out of getting close to the spigot, or even just enabling more experiences that allow you to, I think there's a lot of opportunity in, one, the efficiency gains, like I said, of, using the Lightning Network, given that it's, the lowest transaction fees that you can imagine inside of a payment network. You can save tons of money just by doing that specifically. And then the ability for you to do these other things alongside it. Maybe you can take, new revenue streams by adding in these different financial services. So I think that ultimately, yes, I think that you're absolutely right. And being able to provide either new revenue streams or increase efficiencies inside of your organization is incredibly interesting, especially in today's day and age where, kind of things have, flip-flopped a little bit in terms of like how companies are operating over the last year or so. And so I think that is definitely increasingly interesting, and being able to get closer to the spigot, so to speak, is definitely something that people are going to be looking at more and more. And again, like cutting out, the middlemen of everything that you possibly can is where we see a lot of organizations looking for today. And so I think that that's going to be increasingly interesting and sought out for organizations. And then so I think as we move along, again, Lightning is going to come out as the superior, the obvious choice for doing these kinds of payments because it's just the best. And so I think as we look for people that are trying to get closer to the spigot, and not being so beholden to just like whatever this credit card provider is saying that they're going to give you, having a little bit more of opportunity to set your own destiny.
Yeah, gotcha. And I think it's interesting that we're seeing the Lightning Network is growing. Of course, we would all love to see more self-custodial, self-sovereign adoption, but at the same time, it's starting with a lot of custodial use. I think we have to be honest there. But that said, there are a lot of companies and exchanges who are plugging into the Lightning Network. And by plugging into this network, you've got access to everybody else who has at least a Lightning-enabled provider, whether that is, Bitfinex or Kraken or, whoever. and once you add up, let's say Cash App and some of these other big names who have a lot of users, that's now, we're probably in the tens of millions of people who could use Lightning with an app. So that's a big network effect that you can plug into by being a Lightning company, right? Because all of these other people, maybe they don't know it, to be fair. Maybe they have Cash App installed on their phone and they could use Lightning. They just don't know it. They just don't understand that yet. But I think that's part of the journey of Bitcoin and Lightning. And maybe in this coming cycle, that's going to be, in the next hype cycle, we don't know when. Again, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not saying it's coming right now, but I'm just saying Bitcoin moves in these hype cycles. And in the next cycle, I think that's where we'll see a lot of this Lightning use start to come.
Yeah, no, definitely. I completely agree. And I think that it's, yes, I think that there's a lot of people that, so as an organization, when you look at adopting Lightning, like it does open you up into a lot of new people, like new people that maybe weren't your customer before that can be your customer now. It opens you up into a whole global audience. And so I think that is a huge benefit for organizations as they're looking at some new strategies or how do you expand globally. It's the obvious choice to as you look at global operations. And then secondly, I think that I think there's a lot of folks out there that are becoming increasingly aware of Lightning, and maybe they're just using like the Cash App version of Lightning, if they even know about that or something, getting there. And then I think that there's a lot that is going to happen over the next year or so, and like more non-custodial Lightning usage. That's something that us at Voltage are very, very focused on, and we've been doing a lot with like the release of like our LSP earlier this year, and working really closely with like the LDK team to build out non-custodial like mobile applications and things like that. So I think that we're definitely like at the point where a lot of real things are being built for non-custodial Lightning. Take Mutiny for example. They're one of our first users of our LSP, and they're building a fantastic mobile experience, or it goes beyond mobile. It's kind of anywhere. But it's a great example of like how far we've come in terms of actual non-custodial Lightning usage. So I definitely agree with you. I think that this next cycle is going to be very Lightning focused, and I think that we're building a lot of the tools now to really enable that and make it a great experience.
Yeah. So I think there's probably one other area where I was sort of disagreeing. Like, of course, I probably agreed with, let's say, 80 to 90% of the article. There was probably one other area where I was like, oh, maybe there's a slight disagreement here. You were saying by using Lightning, people could, let's say the company could just not have a fraud department. Or perhaps maybe that wasn't quite what you were saying. You were saying something along those lines. But then I was thinking, well, doesn't this vary on the kind of service that's being done? So as an example, if more and more companies become quasi-Lightning banks, then those customers may actually end up getting hacked and having their Lightning balances spent by the hacker. And then maybe that still necessitates some kind of internal fraud department at these Lightning-enabled companies, right? Even aside, putting AML stuff to the side, AML compliance, just internally having to deal with some of that fraud aspects. So there's maybe some elements there that I might slightly disagree. But do you want to just spell out some of the benefits in your view as well?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that there's, yes, I'm not meaning like everyone, you can fire your finance department, you can fire your, don't comply with any laws or anything like that. It's more so along the lines of like in the original post, like they talk about, there is some like large credit card provider had hundreds or thousands of employees just in like kind of the chargeback department, just dealing with people that are, refuting charges, trying to get refund, whatever. And so, just looking at Lightning from that angle of just, chargebacks don't exist. There's instant finality. When you send a Lightning payment, it is done. You can't claw that back. You can't claw back a Bitcoin transaction, those kinds of things. And so you can significantly reduce the amount of just people operations inside of dealing with those kinds of inefficiencies, and so it can drastically reduce headcount as far as that goes in terms of chargebacks and things like that. There is still some amount of you still have to monitor for fraud and all of those things, but I think that there's a lot of efficiencies that come with the benefits of the network of the instant settlement and all of those things that really benefit organizations that are looking at adopting this. And so being able to facilitate that and having cryptographic proof of payment So there's no refuting whether something got sent or not. You can prove every single bit, and so that reduces significant amounts of headcount and just inefficiencies inside of organizations that spend a giant chunk of time just dealing with that alone.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. And so one other area that you spell out in your article is current fintechs. Let's call them fiat fintechs, right? The fintechs that don't do Bitcoin stuff. So, of course, everyone knows some of these like Wise and Revolut. And I think in Europe there's a popular one called N26. Anyway, there's a bunch of these. In your view, Graham, why are the current fintechs not adequate here?
Several reasons. One, that they're all usually very tied to their specific region or geography. They're not, and as we look to what it's like today, everyone is increasingly more global. Everyone knows someone in a different country. Everyone has family in a different, everyone is increasingly more global. And so they're generally very restricted to specific geographies across the world. So I think that being able to leverage a global payment network to go global is very significant. And then it's also a matter of being able to, I guess there's two more things. One is the amount of the settlement and the counterparty risk involved in that. If we think about, what if those same folks offered a non-custodial experience where someone could actually hold their funds and you are not at risk of the things of, Prime Trust and FTX and all these things that have, happened recently. And then finally, the ability to actually go more internet native, where a lot of these service providers are, a layer on top of the internet that really don't provide the same kind of experience, where Lightning can be, literally embedded into whatever you're doing, both inside of a browser like Albi or Mutiny or something like that, as well as doing it more mobile native. So I think that there's the ability to go more truly embedded into the internet, do micropayments and things like that. Significant, they just basically can't compete on that. The counterparty risk involved still exists, and then just the restrictions on geography and who you can reach to.
Yeah, and I think you make a lot of good points there around the barriers that are erected by governments across borders, right? It's difficult, and that's part of that is why some of these fiat fintechs exist, because of those difficulties. But even still, it makes it difficult for them. Now, I guess the follow-up question from my point of view, and I'm curious to hear what you think. So we've got some of these current fiat fintechs. Why aren't more of those using Lightning today, in your view?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been... It's a couple things. It's one, education. I think that just frankly, they don't know enough about it. They maybe see it as this big scary thing, or it's just too hard to parse or something. I think that they're just not educated on it very well, which is something that we're working on a lot, is trying to get more education for those kinds of users. And then additionally, I think that on the flip side, I think that there is probably more traditional fintechs that are looking at Lightning than anyone thinks. They're just doing it kind of silently behind the scenes, internal departments, R&D, that kind of thing. And so from the conversations that we've had, there's significant amounts of traditional fintech companies looking at adding in Lightning support. We know that for sure. And I think that there's so I think that over the next year, 2 years, whatever, the next cycle, we'll see a significant amount of those actually come out of this kind of silent R&D and get them more into the wild. So I think it's twofold. Of one, it actually is happening more than people realize, and then two, anyone that's not is just not aware of what this is, how it can help them, and then how do they implement it. So there's a big gap that we need to fill there to help them understand what the opportunities are.
Back to the show in a moment. This show is also brought to you by Plan B Forum Lugano, October 20th and 21st. As you might know, Lugano is a city in Switzerland taking on Bitcoin adoption with hundreds of places you can spend sats. They're also hosting a forum or a conference which will host awesome speakers like Nick Szabo, Adam Back, Paolo Arduino, Prince Philip, Giacomo Zucco, Mike Peterson from Bitcoin Beach, and many more. And there's going to be a range of stages. There'll be a main stage as well as a Lightning and peer-to-peer stage. You'll see masterclasses where Bitcoiners can learn skills relating to things like self-custody and so much more. And don't forget, it's real adoption. You can walk around the town and you can find cafes cafes and restaurants and bars and clothes stores, barbershops and hairdressers and watch stores and so much more where you can spend Lightning. So it's a fantastic experience. I enjoyed it last year and I'm looking forward to it again this year. Go and book your tickets over at planb.lugano.ch for Plan B Forum, October 20th and 21st. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. As we know in Bitcoin, it's important to self-custody, and with CoinKite.com, we can get the hardware that we need to secure our Bitcoin. So most notably, the Cold Card Mark IV is a great device for doing this. It's very simple and easy to use. Some people like to criticize and say it's too hard for beginners, but really it's not. Anyone who has bought a cold card and all you've had to do really is plug it in either to power or into the computer directly and use it easily with Sparrow or Spectre and things like this. You follow the prompts on the screen, you write down the 12 or 24 words, you can generate your addresses, and away you go. The cold card is a fantastic device. It's ultra secure. It has all kinds of features that you can use in all kinds of different configurations. Whether you're a beginner, you're intermediate, you're advanced, it has something for you. So to order your cold cards with a discount, use code Livera over at coinkite.com. And now, back to the show. Well, that's interesting, as you said, that many of them are actually considering it, but maybe it's early stage and it takes time, and maybe for them it's lower on their priority list compared to some other thing that they're trying to do. Maybe they're trying to expand, maybe they're trying to, get a license in some other country somewhere or deal with court cases and legal battles and things like this. Maybe it's just lower on their priority list. But I guess that's probably why we don't see a lot of fiat fintechs today using Lightning. But of course, it would be fantastic if more of them did, and I'm sure there are probably there's probably an established Bitcoiner base of users inside some of these fintechs who are already users of some of those fintechs who would love to use Bitcoin or Lightning. It's just not an option yet in that particular service. And as you said, it's early. I think the other big point is around tooling, conversations, having APIs, having SDKs, having the right things for those fintech companies, the fiat fintech ones, not the already existing Bitcoin ones. It's difficult for them to sort of quickly plug and play, and I guess that's part of what Voltage is doing. It's part of what other people in the industry are trying to make it accessible for them. And so maybe Lightning has gone through this adoption cycle where it started out as the true hardcore Bitcoiners, and they would run their Lightning node and figure it out, and then it took time for Lightning businesses to sprout up and come to a level and get to a certain stage of maturity, development, ease of use, clarity. Maybe that's that's where we are in the cycle, right? So we're just early in that cycle, would you say?
Yes, definitely. No, I think that's right, and that's something that we focus on a lot. Is where we want fintechs to be adopting Lightning to be very similar to any other tool or service that they integrate. They're already integrating all kinds of different SaaS platforms for analytics or business intelligence, whatever it is. Like they're already doing things, and we don't want to come to them with Lightning and say, hey, here's this completely new thing that your team has to learn, do all these different things. We want to give them, hey, it's just similar to all these other tools. Here's the APIs, here's how you use it, and we can integrate it very quickly. And so that's what we're really focused on building out, is making it that seamless experience. And so we're working on that. I think that there's a lot of conversations that we're having with folks to make sure that we are, I guess, building along that path. And there's been a lot of interest in traditional fintechs to understand and get on board with Lightning. So I think that we're definitely on the path. We're not there. I don't think that any service is perfect by any means, but I think that we're definitely on the right path. And I think that it's been very surprising in the amount of interest and reception from traditional fintechs that we've seen over the last year. And I think again, next cycle, I think that there's going to be even more kind of eyes on the industry. And so there's a significant amount of opportunity, and I think that we're just trying to solve it in a really good way. So those folks that are coming and wanting to explore Lightning can get the maximum benefits with the least amount of uniqueness or engineering lift possible.
See, and I think one other area where, let's say, a Lightning skeptic could look at us. Now, of course, I probably count both of us in the Lightning promoter camp, but obviously a skeptic could look at us and say, well, hang on, guys. Public Lightning Network capacity, last I checked, is around 5,400 BTC, right? This is we're recording 5th of July 2023, just for anyone listening. And so public lightning capacity is around 5,400 BTC. The total amount of BTC out there is something like 19.4 million BTC. Why is lightning adoption so low? Why is it so small? Why are there only 18,000 nodes on the public network, let's say?
Yes, no, that's a great point, and I think that we do hear that like every now and then. So I think a couple things that I usually respond to that with is one, the channel capacity is only like what you see there is only the public metrics. So like for example, our LSP, all of the channels that we open into like end users are private channels, so they aren't announced. They have to be because of like the way that it functions, and so there is a significant amount of capital that's just private. That's just not part of that metric. So it's naturally a incorrect or maybe not full picture metric for gauging the total amount of Bitcoin that's locked into the Lightning Network. So I think that's number one. And then number two is that the channel the metrics that we have of like node count, channel capacity are basically the only ones that we have to kind of evaluate the network. But those are all those are poor metrics to really gauge the success of the system on. The real like success of the system are like how many transactions are we doing? How many, how is the value of these transactions? Like what is the success of these transactions? All these different things of like how are people actually using it? Where are they using it? All of those kinds of things. And those are naturally very private metrics. Like, the Bitcoin layer 1 is very public on who is sending what, where, when. Lightning is almost the exact opposite of all of those things are just strictly peer-to-peer because it's a peer-to-peer network. And so we don't have visibility into all of those kinds of, I would call them the more important metrics. So we could have 500 Bitcoin locked into the Lightning Network, and it could still be doing, significant amounts of volume and doing real transactions across the world. And so they're just not accurate metrics in tracking how successful is this thing actually doing. And that's one of, depending on who you talk to, that's one of the great benefits of the Lightning Network is we can't tell. It's that private that we really don't know how many transactions, all of these things. And so, those are the things that we track more closely is more, I would call them metrics that are more like closer to the success of the network or our product or things like that. And so they're just disconnected. And so it's a hard one to compare to.
Yeah. And any thoughts on payment reliability? Have you seen that improve over time?
Yes, yeah. I mean, we've definitely been seeing payment reliability improve over time, especially, when we got started, when I was starting to look into this, it was like 2019. And payment success was, I don't know what the percent was, but it wasn't good. It was definitely not good. And we like where we see it today is, much higher, much more reliable. It's actually, I would call it an anomaly to have a failed payment if you have an understood well-connected node and all of these things. And so we have definitely seen an increase in payment reliability, especially with things like our LSP is focused on just-in-time liquidity. So we are able to detect if a payment is coming through that doesn't have enough capacity to reach its end destination, we will automatically zero conf open a new channel to facilitate the payment. So that thus just increases the payment reliability of one that might have failed previously. Now it's able to succeed. So there's a lot of work going into the success of Lightning payments, as well as new pathfinding algorithms and things like that. So huge amounts of increase in payment success, and we're seeing we're seeing a lot less complaints about failed payments or things not working correctly.
Yeah. Any comments around volume then, in terms of even though it's I don't know if people would consider we're in a bear market now or whatever, but have you seen volume still going up even if the price is down massively from all-time high?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. Especially because we're even, in this bear market, whatever you want to call it, we're definitely seeing more and more people come and integrate Lightning. So we're definitely seeing more people adding Lightning into their products and services. And so with that, it's naturally increasing, payment volumes and all of those things. So still seeing new entrants, as well as folks that are still, that have always had Lightning. We're seeing increases in their, volumes and payments as well. So Kevin Rook does a good job of kind of having these Lightning visuals of how, how many payments did Wallet of Satoshi do, or Geyser, or any of those folks. And so we're seeing those, generally speaking, trending upwards. And so we definitely are seeing increase in volume, both from new entrants as well as existing providers doing more payments.
Gotcha. In terms of Lightning protocol stuff and latest developments, is there anything in particular you're excited to see, or something that's coming soon that you're excited to see?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Like, there's a lot inside of like the lower level, super technical details like splicing and async payments, like Bolt 12, like all of those kinds of advancements. I mean, I'm excited to see. I don't think that there's probably not many people that aren't excited to see some of those protocol level improvements. So that's really good. And then we're also for us as an organization, we just launched a product called Surge recently, which is very focused on like node observability. So we felt like, to date, all of our customers, or even people that aren't our customers, as we talk to them, everyone's kind of building out this kind of metric system and like observability and all of these things like themselves. So we saw as an opportunity to build out a really robust system to be able to visualize what's happening inside of your node, view your transactions, get alerted of issues, all of those things. And so we launched that a couple weeks ago to help with node runners and actually, operating nodes. And then additionally, with our LSP coming online, we're really trying to solve, make it, again, moving to that experience of this very, very easy integrated system that allows people to, just connect in and start sending and receiving Lightning payments. But we focus on that very closely on the infrastructure layer. So actually giving people, you have real transactions, you have real Lightning channels, you have your own balances, you can, if Voltage goes away, you still have access to your funds, all of those things. And so we're trying to solve it in a very Lightning and Bitcoin native way. And so with that, it's one of the great things of all of these new protocol improvements is that, we are direct beneficiaries of that and showing them into our users. So really excited for basically there's a huge amount of things being built, both inside of Voltage and outside. And so I think that, over the next couple of years, it's going to be very substantial progress.
Yeah, so as I understand with Surge, the idea is it gives you, in a way, it's like analytics for your Lightning node, and it helps you understand things like channel uptime, channel states, usage. Maybe it would be handy for customer support aspects, and maybe it's also handy for optimization. That's basically the idea, that this is software that you are running on your Lightning node, and it can extract some of the key information that can then be used to optimize or update certain aspects of how you run that Lightning node. So as an example, maybe you see that a certain channel is inactive, or there's something you can do to improve your Lightning node. Is that basically kind of the layman's understanding of what Surge is?
Yeah. I mean, it's pretty accurate. It's really just a tool to give you kind of a single pane of glass into everything that's happening inside of your node. So you can have give access to your finance teams to see, here's all of the transactions, here's all of our sends, here's all of our receives, here's where all of the fees went. So you can have very tight accountability of all of the money flows, as well as engineering teams of getting alerted of if that channel goes down, or if you have, we show channels that you have open that are totally functional, but they are maybe not routing payments. So it's basically just dead capital sitting there. So you can be more efficient in your capital allocations. And then, there's a lot more that we're going to add to it. So ultimately, we just want to give full visibility into what's happening. And there's Lightning is very dense with the amount of data and things that are happening inside of it. And so really trying to just show those kind of hidden areas inside of a Lightning node, or, what operations are happening, and really give full visibility across an entire organization. So you can get buy-in from the compliance team, from the accounting team, as well as engineering. So I feel like there's it solves a lot of different things for different departments. But ultimately, that was, as we talked with larger enterprises, that was a big requirement of being able to have something that their other departments outside of engineering can get comfortable using and getting on board with.
I see. So that's almost a customer requested set of features around monitoring the Lightning node. And I guess for a lot of people at a business level, at an enterprise level, they need to integrate Bitcoin and Lightning into what they've already got. And of course, they might have some ERP, enterprise, resource planning system, and they need something that can easily plug into all of that. And maybe they've currently got a lot of stuff that works on the fiat side, the fiat banking side. Maybe they can download, okay, here's the fiat bank statements, here's the fiat aspects of it. But we need something to plug in the Lightning aspect of it. And so I guess you're trying to build something on that, that's kind of where your business, or at least this particular product, is sitting.
Yes, yeah, definitely. I mean, being able to give, like, again, like, previously, as we talked with folks, like, they're basically the ways that they would do that is like, writing their own scripts and, software and everything to basically do all that. And so, we heard almost everyone that we're talking to that's integrating Lightning is rewriting the same application over and over and over again. And so we saw that as the opportunity of like, let's write it for them and just give it to them kind of on a plate. So that's, being able to hook into those kind of more well understood systems that, large organizations usually have. And then also being able to be very operations focused for, engineers or operators that are actually, doing the day-to-day activity of the node.
Yeah. So if we look forward then in terms of where things are going, if every company becomes a Lightning company, I mean, are you seeing that? Are you saying that in a similar way to, let's say, every company in the 90s needs to learn about the internet, because otherwise, you're going to get left behind, or at least you're leaving all this money on the table because there's this massive opportunity out there. I guess that's the sense in which we're saying every company will become or needs to consider the Lightning Network. But although it may seem extremely early today, right? Because the number of Bitcoin users today is, pick your number, right? Somewhere under 100 million, probably, in terms of on-chain users, it's probably more like 5 or 10 million in terms of on-chain Bitcoin users today. But that said, there's a lot of custodial users on top of those 5 to 10 million on-chain users, right? There might be one exchange who supports, tens of millions of users, but they're really custodial. So in the same way, there'll be a lot of Lightning users who are just custodially, like the end user, let's say, who's using Lightning custodially through their company, who in turn, that company is your customer, Voltage's customer, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yes, I think that's a good way to put it. It's just the same thing of, companies in the 90s, you should learn about this internet thing. I think it's going to be very helpful for your business and what you're doing and all those things. So it's very, very similar to that. And that, there's a lot of opportunity inside of, having a Lightning strategy for a business. And even to your point, like there's a lot of folks that can, surface Bitcoin and Lightning to like the end user and do, a lot of things with that. But there's also customers that we're talking to that are plan on using it more in the back end of maybe they're an international company. They have banking relationships and, across tons of different countries, and they have to settle in between banks in just side of their back end. And they're looking at using Bitcoin and Lightning to do that settlement instead of, the Swift network or the traditional payment rails. And so in that context, the end users, everyone that's using their product is still doing fiat like 100%. There's no kind of Bitcoin exposure to them, but behind the scenes, they are using Bitcoin to do these international settlements. And so there's a ton of opportunity as that as well. Maybe you don't have to show a Lightning invoice to every one of your users. There's things in your backend that could save you a bunch of money just by using Bitcoin for settlement instead of, these other networks.
Yeah, that's interesting because I think the use cases that can appeal to us, or let's say to the average user, average person, they're thinking B2C, but they're sort of forgetting there's this massive market of B2B, and that market is arguably even bigger than the B2C market. And so that there's an opportunity there for Lightning. And I've heard this as well from other people I've spoken to, that they're considering it as part of their corporate, they're looking at it in their own ways. And so what are some of the other things you're hearing from corporates and Lightning? Are there any other things you're hearing from corporates considering this?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think that there's a couple different things. I mean, we're hearing more and more interest for people that just want to hold Bitcoin like as kind of a treasury system. Like just Michael Saylor's kind of made that famous by now of being able to like hold Bitcoin on your balance sheet and those kinds of things. So I see that as almost like it doesn't have to be a step one, but I see that as a step one of like, being able to get comfortable with just buying it, and just holding it, like, and, get well understood in that regard. And then we're starting to see more and more people look at it from business operations. So we see it from, like I just said, of like some internal settlement use cases. We see it for more of the consumer end. We see a lot of people looking at it from like the reward standpoint. I think that's been sort of validated across people like Fold and with MicroStrategy's recent platform on kind of their more enterprise level like reward systems. So we see people looking at it from a reward standpoint a lot as well. And then finally, we do see some people doing a lot of more consumer types, so things kind of like Cash App, deposits, withdrawals, those kinds of things. So we see it kind of across the board, from like the internal B2B types all the way to direct to consumer. So it just kind of depends on the business model, but we're seeing people very interested in at least as a number one, understanding how they can apply this to their business. And that's something I think Michael Saylor said in the MicroStrategy conference a couple months ago, is that just look, like, you don't need to understand all the nitty gritty details on Bitcoin and Lightning as a get go. Understand what you're trying to achieve from a product perspective, and how can Bitcoin and Lightning fit into that, and then start taking a step into like actually looking at integrating it and how it could work. So I see it. I think that's a great way of thinking about it. Of really just think about it from the product standpoint, and then evaluate how can you actually apply it and go from there.
Yeah, of course. And I think those of us who are interested in the technology, we have this tendency to go down technical rabbit holes, but at the same time, you can confuse somebody who's new to that. And the analogy I like to use is, I say, it's not like you have to teach everybody how to design a car. They just need to know how to drive the car, right? They just need to know the basics. And so I think a similar analogy there is stuff like Lightning address, right? So as an example, you as a company or an entrepreneur don't have to think too deeply about the internal technicals of the Lightning network. You, as an example, might tell your customer, hey, what's your Lightning address? I'll pay you out to your Lightning address, right? So that's probably an easy example, like where today, let's say a company, a builder, someone is saying, oh, I need to get this to the customer. How do I do this? How do I route the mail to them? No, you just use an email. You just say, hey, what's your email? I'll email it to you. It's the same kind of shift in the thinking that's required to get people to understand they don't need to become a Lightning Ultra technician. They just need to know they can use it, and there are easy ways to plug in and use it, whether it's Lightning address, whether it's an LSP or a provider, right?
Yeah, exactly. And that's where we're, really trying to push for, is just, being able to make this all, very easy, very plug and play, which, admittedly, it hasn't been that, to date. We are fully, aware of the hurdles and, all the challenges that we've the network has experienced over the several years that it's been running. But again, I mean, to your internet analogy, I mean, think about when you had to plug in the dial up systems, your modems, and someone made a phone call, you would just get disconnected from the internet, those kinds of things. So we're graduating from that level onto the next level, and so really just making it the experience you have today of sending and receiving an email is where we're getting to. And so very excited to be building out that kind of future.
Yeah. And one other question I had, just around US versus non-US. So I'm curious in terms of when you're talking to corporates and businesses around there, are you seeing a difference in, countries? Right? Are you having a more advanced conversation with companies in the US, or is it actually not that different depending on who you talk to around the world?
It's generally been not that different. There are we see a lot of activity inside of Africa, for example. There's a lot of people in Africa that are working on Lightning services or things like that. So it's even from the more grassroots Africa Free Routing and those kinds of organizations, all the way up into some more established organizations. So it's been a hot one, I would say, over the last couple of months. But then generally speaking, I think everyone's kind of on the same level. There's some people that are really trying to understand the regulatory environment for a lot of these things, which I think is more, when we hear that, it's much more on the altcoin side of things, things outside of Bitcoin of what this, Binance is getting sued for whatever, what does that mean for me? And so it's kind of, things that you naturally have to deal with alongside just the general environment. But I mean, being specific on Bitcoin and Lightning, I think that, across most of them, it's all been pretty standard. And I think that we see interest from all regions, and they're definitely all kind of pushing forward at the same pace.
For some companies, they may also be worried about, let's say, capital gains tax implications, depending on their country. If they were to run, let's say, a platform, and that platform is, let's say, paying out sats, then maybe there's a consideration there around capital gains tax and how to deal with that aspect of it. Are you getting into those kinds of conversations, and do you have any ideas around what can be done in those cases?
We like a little bit. We don't. I mean, we're not focused on the tax side of things, generally speaking. But we do kind of work with organizations to try and help like understand, what that's like, or at least writing, again, Surge is a great, tool for kind of looking at your transactions so you can kind of answer those questions more specifically. So we do work with organizations on at least providing them what they need to answer those internally. So we do work with folks to do that. We don't necessarily have like a direct, tax arm or something to give you specific advice.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I'm just saying, because I'm just thinking in terms of what might be a blocker for some of those companies. They might say, hey, we would love to use Lightning, but actually right now the tax maybe for them, maybe they're not ready to be a trailblazer. And so they want to see somebody else go first before they decide to follow, as an example, right? And so if it becomes a blocker for them, well, then maybe that's sort of, okay, they're going to put that on the back burner, focus on some other priority until it's been resolved in some way. Maybe in some cases that's, as an example, in the US with GAAP accounting, that they're going to update the accounting standards. Now that's more for the hodling use case, but maybe there's similar sorts of things that have to happen so that the rewards kind of platforms are a bit easier from a tax perspective. Well, that's just one thing. Is there anything else anything else you can share in terms of what is coming up with Voltage?
Yeah, I mean, we're just we're working on a lot. Things like Surge and our LSP were big things that we really wanted to get out this year. So we did, the first half of the year, and so that more of the second half is going to be very focused on platform unification. So bringing it everything clicked together really, really nicely. Give users that experience of just a similar platform to any other thing that they're integrating. And then also we're working a lot. We're seeing a lot of interest in like the mobile side of things. So people developing, non-custodial mobile apps and being able to integrate with things like LDK and using our LSP for that. So we're seeing, again, lots of increase in that. And so I think that being able to build out these kind of more unique non-custodial experiences is definitely something that's going to continue. And so we're really focused on that and being able to like beef up our LSP and be able to service those folks more, even better than we can today. So a lot, I think, is going to happen inside of our LSP going forward and being able to really push that forward. So a lot of product enhancements, a lot of things that are going to be coming down the line here soon. So not a lot that I can say specifically, but I think that we see a lot of interest in mobile development, as well as just more larger scale enterprises looking to adopt it.
Yeah. Also curious if you have anything you can share in terms of LDK, as in why LDK with the LSP as compared to any of the other implementations.
Yeah, I mean, we see people really liking the LDK experience for a couple reasons. One, it gives the most control for a user over like the experience, where it's literally the entire node is running on the phone, and so there's virtually no like counterparty like risk at all in it. And with the enhancements that LDK has done, it's not as when LDK first came out, it was a little hard to implement, but it's definitely come a long way and it's much easier to implement now. And then there's a lot of enhancements that they're doing along. I think that from what we've seen, they'll probably be the first like add async payments and some of these newer things. And so we see people really interested in adding in LDK because it seems to be very lightweight and very easy to integrate. And from the people that we've here that have worked on it, they really like the integration. And like the Spiral team has done a very, very good job of working with the customers and making sure that it's all available and answering any questions. So ultimately, we see it as a very very good way to like build out the mobile experience.
Oh, cool. Well, hey, well done to the LDK team. I'm sure they're happy to see happy customers or happy users of LDK. Okay, well, I think those are probably the key things I was interested to chat about. So probably a good spot to wrap up here. If you have any closing thoughts for listeners, and of course, where can people find you?
Yeah, definitely. No, thanks a lot for having me. I think that ultimately, just I would say keep on the lookout for Voltage. We're doing a lot of new things. We're going to be releasing a lot of new stuff too. So there's definitely, just generally speaking, a lot happening in Lightning. So I think it's going to be an exciting time now and over the next 2 years or so. So keep an eye on the space, I would say. For myself, so you can find me on Twitter at GKRIZEK. Our company account is voltage.cloud. The Twitter account is at voltage_cloud. So definitely reach out if you have any questions or anything. Happy to answer, or just generally chat about Lightning and how to add it into what you're doing.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining me, Graham.
Awesome. Thanks a lot.
If you're enjoying the show, please remember to leave a review, thumbs up, 5-star, anything you can do to help me out, and share the show with your family and friends. That would be really appreciated. Thank you, and I'll see you in the Citadels.